90s comics suck. No, man, you suck. I like that, Joe. That's a good opener.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think people are misguided about 90s comics in general.
Oh, there
I
were some
mean,
bad ones. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
like,
there were some bad ones, but I mean, people focus too much on the bad and they forget about all the good shit that came out in the 90s. So that's what we're here to do tonight is let's talk about all the amazing comic books that came out in the 90s. Like there
right,
was a
right.
lot. There were a lot, and we're gonna go through some of our favorites. We'll briefly touch on other things that we've probably already covered on other episodes, but we'll retouch on some of them because they're worth mentioning. And yeah, so like I'll give people their due when it comes to late 90s. I think late 90s probably were a little more. I think the comic industry was going through a rough time then. There were a lot of gimmicky covers to try to sell books and stuff. So
That's more like the
yeah, there
mid.
was
I'd say by the late 90s,
mid.
like everything was picking back up. That's when it got real
But
good.
when did Marvel file for bankruptcy? It was in what, late 90s, right?
Like 96, 97.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's when
They,
like
they
yeah,
they were on
that's
the heavy rebound by the time like by around like 99, 98. That's when like they first started putting out really good stuff again, like the Kurt
yeah,
Busiek Avengers and all that was running in the late
yeah,
90s. So they were on a pretty good course back to goodness.
back, yeah. But they had that 3 year period there where things were a little rough, but a lot of indie stuff was out there that was really good. I mean, maybe the superhero books weren't as maybe the quality wasn't as good for some of the superhero books, but if you're into indie comics, man, the 90s had a lot of stuff to offer. Yeah. Hey, Thierry, how's it going? Uh, yeah,
But
so,
before we get into that, you got to check in, Joe.
yeah, no, man, I've just been reading like a little bit of Madman. I was reading Heavy Liquid as well because you were going to touch on that. Uh, so I haven't really been doing much aside from reading those books. Shows. We barely watched any shows this week. I started back at work and stuff, so man, with the being sick and stuff, I kind of don't have much for a check-in. I
Yeah,
mean, we'll,
I kind of biffed Heavy Liquid. I guess that one came out in 2000. Like I always thought it was a 90s comic, but I guess it kind of counts. It's like right there at the tail end. But
yeah, yeah.
but how did you like that? It's really good
um,
little.
I'm 3/4 through. I'm at what 200 pages in, so I'm almost done. I'm to the part where he's on the train with the other agent that's trying to bring him in, and he skips the train after finding his ex and having her do the sculpture for the guy. So I'm at that part now. So I'm getting
Okay,
close to
so
the end. Yeah.
how do you like the way it changes genres up? How it kind of starts as a heist book and then it kind of turns into like a mystery novel and then it almost turns into like a secret agent
Sci-fi
story, right? Yeah,
with a little
sci-fi
sci-fi
secret agent.
twist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. And I love the art style. I love the the color palette, the way it's kind of monochromatic and he depending if it's a flashback or what kind of setting, he changes the color slightly. Like the art will have like a pinkish hue or a yellow hue depending or a grayish blue hue depending on the mood they're trying to set. So yeah, it's really good. It's been a book that I've had for a long time, like many of the books I have on my shelves and just don't get around to reading it. So now I had an excuse to read it. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Pope's a master.
Mm, mm. And I've been hitting up my library editions of Madman as well. So Heavy Liquid was my digital read, and the Madman books were my physical books reading this week. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm.
How far are you on Madman? By do you
I made it through the first library edition, volume one. So I've got that must be what at least 25 issues probably in
so you're
around
probably a
there.
good chunk into the Dark Horse stuff. I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah. What was it before Dark Horse? It was on.
Oni, and then it went to Dark Horse, and then it went to Image.
Okay, so I'm probably on the Dark Horse now then, because I did the Oni. It seems to me there was another company in there too.
Uh,
Anyway,
Oh,
Yeah.
originally, when it was put out as graphic music, I think it was a Fantagraphic book.
Okay.
When he like, but that was like before Frank Einstein was really Madman. He was kind of like a
Hmm.
monster character in
In
the
the
earlier books.
House of Id
Yeah, in the
was
House
his
of Id.
first. That was his first appearance. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Where he has the eyeball in his mouth and stuff. Yeah, he's really kind of more creepy looking.
Yeah. Hey, Serge. Hey, Devin. How's it going? Thanks for popping in.
Oh man, we got Demon in the house, and like you said, Herr Sergio. What is going on, brother man?
So, do you have anything for a check-in?
Oh yeah, and Serge might be happy to hear this. I finally got to watch Black Adam, which it's
Uh,
actually a pretty cool movie. I thought I was gonna like it pretty well, but I ended up really enjoying it. I'm not the world's biggest fan of The Rock, but this film like uses him correctly. Like he's pretty quiet in the film. He doesn't do his normal shit talking. He's actually kind of intimidating in it. I think that it really played to his strengths, oddly enough. So I highly recommend checking out Black Adam. I mean, it's just a big action sequence, but like it's a really cool one. And yeah, like I said, Pierce Brosnan as Doctor Fate was just amazing.
I'll have to get. Hey, stupid cat. Get away from there. Chewing on the wires.
Tabernacle.
Tabarnak. Yeah.
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 But yeah, aside
Yeah.
from that, like you, I've been doing some reading old school stuff. I've mostly been sticking to Kurt Busiek's Astro City. For some reason,
Oh
I was feeling
yeah.
really nostalgic and wanted to read some really good, really strong superhero deconstruction. Like, if you're a person that thought that Watchmen was a little too cruel, a little too extra, but you liked that style of superhero story, I cannot recommend checking out Astro City enough. It's basically this whole universe, and there's all these different characters, and from arc to arc, it's about different aspects and different eras of this city full of superheroes. Really, really outstanding.
Who's the who's the creators of that?
Kurt Busiek, and let's see, mostly people who worked on the early day art, but like there's been a lot of artists come and go. Let's see, got the book right here. Brian Eric Anderson, Will Blyberg, and Comic Craft did the coloring. But yeah, for most of the original run, the Homage Comics run, it was Brent Anderson and Kurt Busiek.
Yeah, I always hear people speak very highly of that series.
Well, because
Yeah.
it jumped to several labels too. It originally was on Homage Comics, and then it went to Wildstorm Image, and then like after that, it eventually became a Vertigo book. And I think now DC just puts it out whenever they do put out stuff for it. I think it's a
Yeah.
Black Label book.
Cool.
Yeah, man. And
Mm.
also, been reading a lot of Grant Morrison, but that's for an upcoming video, so I don't want to spill
Yeah.
too much about what I've been reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
We'll
I'll
be.
talk about a little bit of it tonight. I mean, like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah. We'll touch on some stuff because he came over with a lot of the other British when they did the British invasion to the DC to
been
DC
reading a lot of
when
Invisibles,
Invisibles. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
getting
Cool.
caught up. Yeah,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
90's
We'll
goodness.
probably. I'm reading a little Grant Morrison as well because I figured I haven't read enough of his stuff, and we were talking about it, and I'd like to do an episode where we just cover a lot of some of his better works. So yeah, I've been working through that too, but I took a little break to try to catch up on some stuff for this episode. So yeah, yeah. I've what was I reading? Oh yeah, that's true. I was reading the Animal Man, his Animal Man run. I had the I have the book one of that, so I was reading that, but then I put that down. And I was also reading digitally. My digital read for Grant Morrison at the time was Filth. I started reading Filth, which is a very weird book. Yeah, I'm probably a third way through that one, and it's yeah. So yeah, I did have a. I forgot I read that. So
Yeah, Built is one of the Morrison books where he goes extra, extra Morrison
yeah,
on it.
yeah, yeah. So
I,
yeah.
Devin, I know you like to start at the beginning and read everything from the start, but like Astro City is literally one of the books where you can actually pick up any of the story arcs and read it because it's usually a self-contained thing, and you might like not know a few here and there's about a character that'll show up in a book, but mostly you can just pick up and read at any jump on point with
Mm,
Astro City.
mm.
And yeah, The Invisibles is also super Grant Morrison books. I mean,
Yeah.
he is he is absurdly weird, and there are certain books that really highlight that over others. So I know a lot of people know him mostly because of his Superman and his Batman, and like that's not really representative of like the man's actual creative output, in my
Well, seeing
opinion.
as how
Even though they're both good runs of those books.
yeah, so basically, if we're mentioning him, we'll tie it into the 90's. Is one of the first books he worked on over at DC was Doom Patrol,
Right, right.
which inspired a lot of what we're seeing in the show that's on HBO Max. A lot of it was inspired by Grant Morrison stuff from Doom Patrol, and yeah, that's a great. He started that in he got on that I think in '89. I can't
Yeah,
remember who the first writer was, and he took over on issue. Was it issue
15.
14, 15? Yeah, something like that. The book was maybe a year in or a year and a half in, and then he took over duties, and yeah, he got on that book in the late 80's, like probably around 88, 89, something like that. So, and then he had how many issues of that did he write?
Um, I have I have the three omnibuses, which are 20 issues, so about 60 issues of it,
Mhm.
I would say, somewhere around there.
That sounds about right. I was going to guess around 50, so that sounds about right. A good 60 issues of Doom Patrol. And I've read a little chunk of that. I think I've read 2 trades, so yeah, and yeah, it was pretty good, man. I was impressed, and then like while watching the show, they touched on a lot of the from 2 trades that I read. They touched on quite a bit of what he covered, what I read in those 2 trades on the show itself, and the show is a great adaptation of the comic too. Like it's one of the better, I think, comic book adaptations. If you're someone who enjoys more true, like staying true to the source material, then I think Doom Patrol will definitely be a series you'll enjoy.
Yeah, especially if you like really abstract surrealism, like really absurd surrealism.
Hmm.
Like it really hits that on the nose. And like you said, it's very influential, especially to a lot of books nowadays. Like I read a lot of stuff that comes out from Vault, and it really,
Hmm.
really reminds me of early Grant Morrison. Like
Grant Morrison, yeah,
his work is just so influential to like modern day comics. It's not even
yeah,
funny.
yeah. Then he did. He also worked on Animal Man in the '90's. So yeah, he did quite a bit of work in the '90's at DC. So yeah, that's another good one, Animal Man. Um, yeah. So after that, who did you want to touch on after that for '90's comics? What book
I
did
was
you want to
gonna
talk about?
have you start off like kind of explain how important the 90s were to you and like maybe a few books that really really kind of got you hyped for it. Like that's kind of what I was going to do because um in the 90s I was by the time like the 90s proper were happening, I was in junior high, and I felt a little bit out of comics because I it got to the point where like almost how it is now, like every number one people thought that they could sell for 25 bucks
Yeah,
right off the
yeah,
bat.
yeah,
And especially if it was a foil cover, which there was so many foil covered number ones coming
yeah,
out in like 1994 through 97.
yeah,
Like so I kind of got hooked into you know weird stuff that like for some reason like cover prices were high but you'd find them for pretty cheap stuff, like Sin City.
Sin City. It
um
was awesome. Yeah,
I I was kind of late to the Frank Miller game. Like I do love his Daredevil, and I did remember reading some of it, but I did not recognize his name and read it because of him. Like it was around Sin City where I really learned his name and really became a fan of his, and really just kind of took off from there. A lot of other kind of really neat stuff that we talked about, like because when we were kids, there was really really bad licensed comics, most put out by Marvel. They were just really based out
yeah.
of a movie. They were like 4 or 5 shots.
Hmm.
But around that time, like Dark Horse, for some reason they picked up all the 20th Century Fox horror
Yeah,
action movies, and you got really really neat stuff like Aliens, Predator,
Predator.
Terminator books that were actually
Yeah,
like weren't
RoboCop.
yeah, that weren't actually just based off of the film itself. They were
Yeah.
their own really really well written story from some of the best talent working in the books right at that
Mhm.
time, and it's really blew me away. Another thing I really got into just because he looked so cool, and then I finally picked it up and really read it and loved it, was of course Matt Wagner's Grendel,
Grendel. Yeah,
which which
I
is
had a few.
just
Yeah.
so incredible.
Yeah.
It really does go through some time jumps. It sets up its own weird society and universe. But if you really read the original stuff with Hunter Rose and stuff, it's just such a really kind of cool crime drama at first involving a hero. It's very noir esque. It's very poetic. Like it's very just well, very eloquent little book. And as for weird superhero stuff, because like you said, like the main name superheroes really fell off and were putting out pretty bad books in my opinion. But the cool thing is like you got these other labels that launch and they just made more superhero stuff but better. And one of those is something that I'd never seen replicated. It's on the same level as some Grant Morrison stuff, a little more serious, a little more heartbreaking. But we have Sam Keith's The
Max.
Max, which
Yeah.
is a book that broke my brain. I had no idea you could tell stories that in depth and just that brutal about survivors of sexual assault, and just really getting into the mindset of the people who are involved in that, and how there are people who will pretend to be the hero in that, but they are just the background character. And the oh dude, the Max is just like this beautiful riddle wrapped up in just poetry and just beautiful surreal art. And if you're interested in hearing a story about survivors and the hard life and the hard line of being related to a sexual predator and stuff like that in a very surreal superhero-esque way, like you will not find anything like it
Mm.
except for the Max. It's just
Yeah.
so one of
Which
a kind.
and it was so like, yeah, I remember, and it was fairly popular and well received that it even MTV picked it up with their what was it called, their late night animation. They had Eon Flux, they had a few other animations on, and they picked that up, the Max, and they made an
Yeah,
animated adaptation of it. Yeah.
it was straight. It was a straight adaptation too. The only thing that they cut out really was the pit crossover.
Yeah, yeah. And that was called Liquid something, right? Was it?
No,
What
Max
was
was
it?
part of MTV's Oddities. Like
Yeah,
it was that and the head. Remember, like the head. There was like that
yeah,
dude with the big head with the little purple alien that came out of
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Then they had Eon Flux. That was fun. That was like, I think that was on Friday nights. I think they had that. Yeah, on MTV. That was some good. They had some good animations on there. Yeah,
But yeah, you were thinking about Liquid Television. Then that is where Aeon Flux came from and some other stuff. But
yeah, and
yeah,
I think MTV picked that up actually. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think MTV actually bought that to add it to uh their TV, to have the rights to Eon Flux so they could put it on their channel and stuff. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, so that's cool. I remember that from the 90's. That was pretty cool. Yeah, the Max, when I saw that I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And it, like you say, it was almost like they took the pages, like panels straight from the comics, and just animated it a little bit. It was because it
yeah.
definitely it
It was
was.
a little more of a motion comic than an actual
Yeah,
cartoon. But
yeah,
we
yeah,
it was the first time we ever had anything really like that. So like you didn't know what to call it.
yeah. It was one of the better Image books that came out when Image first started. The Max was one of the better books.
Yeah. For really early Image, yeah, I would say like the Max, Savage Dragon, and maybe
Yeah,
Shadowhawk by Jim Valentino were
yeah.
like
Shadowhawk was pretty fun too. Yeah,
were the most
yeah,
readable ones. I know a
yeah,
lot of people
yeah.
say Spawn, but
Yeah, and you got to think, in the 90's from Image, you still have Spawn and Savage Dragon that are still running
yeah,
to this day.
probably the
So,
longest running comics at still at this time.
Right now, yeah, they're probably the two longest running comics aside from like Spider-Man and Batman and shit like that from the
Well,
big
see,
two.
like those have been relaunched and stuff with new number ones every couple of years, where
Yeah,
it spawns
yeah,
like an issue almost 400, I think, something like that.
yeah, mm, yeah, yeah. So all right, so how my 90's comics. I was a little older, so like most people, I started with Big Two because I lived in a small town where I didn't really have a comic shop. So initially, I kind of really started getting into like Ghost Rider. Uh, yeah, the Teixeira, Teixeira or Teixeira. I don't know how he likes to pronounce his last name, but I was reading some Ghost Rider, and then this book came out, and this is like one of those books that it's definitely got like that indie comic vibe to it. It's when they revamped Lobo from when he was wearing his spandex there, the orange and purple spandex. Well, they revamped him to be like this uh, hard rock, like metal looking guy that's just busting skulls and stuff. And I really dug it. Simon Bisley was the artist on that, and I loved his style. Like I fell in love with his style. And Bisley did a lot of work in the 90's, doing a lot of covers. He did do you think did he did more cover work than interior work, or do you think it was pretty 50-50?
I think in America he did more cover work, but like
Yeah.
I think in the 90's, like he was also doing ABC Warriors over in
Okay.
2000 AD magazine. So like he did a lot of interior work, but like I think
Hmm.
what he's mostly known for in the US is his covers during
Yeah.
the 90's.
So like Lobo with Keith Giffen and Alan Grant were writing, and they had Bisley do the yeah, he did a couple. They did Lobo and Lobo's Back, and they had Bisley on both of those, and I fell in love with those books. Like, look at the covers. I mean, how can you not like these covers by
Yeah, man.
like
It's I
it's like
mean
a heavy metal.
it screams
Yeah,
90's, man, like nothing
it
else.
screams 90's metal. Like that could be straight up like if you bought a CD, that would be like the cover on a CD for a metal band or some shit like that. So it was pretty cool. I really dug it. And and when I went to college, I kind of fell off comics, but I was still picking up the occasional book here and there. And that's when I discovered Garth Ennis. Garth Ennis was the first thing I read from him was Hitman. And so like I picked this up recently. This is Hitman and Lobo. Yeah. That's and Hitman was the first thing I ever read from Garth Ennis. And I think he
Is
started
McCrae
back
drawing that?
Doug Mankey
Okay.
does this one, but McCrae does the regular series. The ongoing Hitman was Garth Ennis with McCrae,
Okay.
and I really enjoyed that. I was looking for a book. I was kind of getting off the superhero train a little bit, and I was looking for something a little different. And I was looking up books, and Hitman was like probably one of the more critically acclaimed books at the time, and I think that came out in '93, if I'm not mistaken. I think the first Hitman comic. Yeah, and so I started picking that up on pretty regularly every month and stuff. Like I was in college, so I didn't have much money, so I couldn't buy comics like I used to when I was a kid. So I'd probably pick that up, and I'd pick up the occasional Image book here and there to see what was up with Image. And yeah, so that was my introduction to Garth Ennis, and I really dug it. Hitman was pretty fun. Um, other books I read, like I said, were Ghost Rider, and then like I'd catch the occasional book here and there, like of Hellboy, because Hellboy came out in the '90's, and I'd stop in at the comic shop and pick up an occasional book on Hellboy here and there. Uh, the Mask movie came out. I didn't know anything about the Mask until the movie came out, and then I got interested in the Mask a little bit. So I got into a lot of these things after the fact, so I'd just get random issues here and there. I never really got full runs because they were pretty hard to find sometimes because they're already like kind of 4 or 5 issues in. So I'd just pick up the occasional run here and there of certain books like Tank Girl, The Mask. Started getting into all that kind of stuff, which was pretty fun. Uh, like Tank Girl's like the style like of Jamie Hewlett. Like I love his art style. Like he's such a great book. to read, to look at, you know. Yeah, Devin, you mentioned The Preacher, but Preacher came after. I read that much later. I always saw it on the stands, but for some reason, back when it first came out, I was still kind of reading superhero stuff, and I didn't really know what it was, and it was called Preacher, so I never really picked it up till later on when, you know, people started praising it a lot and stuff. Yeah. So,
And
so I
Goddess
got
is a
him.
pretty good little short run that he did. Just saying, Devin, if you want to check that out, it is pretty good.
Yeah. Mm. Evil Ernie. Yeah, Thierry's mentioned Evil Ernie, and I know
Yeah,
Johnny's a big fan of Evil Ernie. So yeah,
yeah.
Johnny has those.
Well,
Yeah.
kind of like Joey did in college. In high school, I kind of stopped reading comics for a couple of years until, yeah, I kind of found this guy and really, really fell hard into Chaos Comics. I really love that entire universe. It was just like crazy, like almost superhero-esque stories of these monsters. You know, you had Chastity the vampire that slays other vampires. You had Bedlam, the Hell's bounty hunter. You had uh, Lady Death. You had like all these just really extra characters, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful universe. And like Joey said, another person that really helped me get back into comics, and Devin brought this up, is Garth Ennis. And yeah,
Hmm.
Priester really, really changed
Yeah.
my mind about. So I really thought that comics were stuck in little kid mode for the most part. Like even the Image stuff that I was into, like it was a little more hard edged. They cussed a little more, but it wasn't a mature comic. It wasn't like, the Vertigo shit that I got into like
Yeah.
directly after.
Yeah. And that's where we're talking about Doom Patrol earlier, and that's kind of where I think the Vertigo era kind of got ushered in. Was Doom Patrol one of their first books for Vertigo?
Yeah, the thing was is
Mhm.
they came out around the same time. They had Doom Patrol, Sandman, John Constantine Hellblazer, and Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. The books were too dark and too brutal, and they kept getting DC Comics in trouble with the censors. So they either had to scrap these books and lose all kinds of money on it, or they had to find a way to publish them. And so they came up with an adult-only line and launched Vertigo, so like they could keep these books and have a home for future books like that because they knew that they had a future putting out works like that, and that's how
Yeah.
Vertigo was born.
Yeah. Through Karen Berger.
Yeah,
He was the
and she's a genius.
mastermind, yeah, behind the whole Vertigo line, bringing those Brits over here and giving them all these odd books, odd characters, and letting them run with it, and they just killed it. They all killed it. Like Vertigo is such a great, great publishing line for DC. Mm. Yeah, I think Vertigo is probably if you had to summarize 90's comics, like I think Vertigo is the best example of what good 90's comics were, and they're all three-quarters of them were coming out from Vertigo, I'd say. Mm.
Vertigo and Dark Horse, but yeah,
Of course, yeah.
Vertigo was the big boys table. That's where like the really artistic, stuff with panache was coming out of. Aside from places like Fantagraphics and other like art house labels like that, yeah, Vertigo was really pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable too.
Fulci just being a dink. Hey, Fulci, what's up? Hey, Mel. How's it
Yeah, we
going
all
tonight?
we all know how much Matt hates John Constantine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, like, yeah, I was like, see, I have like, and I've been kind of going around eBay and picking up some of these older books that I missed out on. Like, I picked this up off eBay. I got the
How
masks.
how cool would it be if they did a new version of The Mask, but actually based off the comic?
Like, you mean like either a show or a movie?
Yeah, like do it on since basically Netflix has that huge deal with Dark Horse. Like if they were to do like a straight up,
That's
masked
true. Yeah.
show.
I would be down. Like, they
Oh,
could go a little less, like, still keep that far fetched, weird craziness of it, but make it dark. Kind of like, man, you know who they should get to do it?
the guy that
We
directs the
mentioned.
the Terrifier movies, because basically Terrifier is the Mask
Okay,
comic on film.
I guess, yeah, you could go that way, or like making a goofy thing kind of serious is the Happy. You
Oh,
know,
yeah,
like
Neville, Dean, and
yeah,
Taylor to do it.
yeah. They'd probably be good at it too because they can get all wacky and crazy and goofy, but make it so dark and serious and action packed. You know, like I think they'd probably have a good shot. They'd probably do something good with it as well. Yeah,
Oh, Mel, the Sandman show is so good.
yeah,
It is probably one of the best comic to live action adaptations ever made, in my opinion. Just
yeah. It's right up
chef
there.
kisses to the moon.
Yeah, and it's been renewed for a second season, so we're gonna get more, which is awesome. That's amazing. Can't wait for that. Yeah. Well, we're definitely gonna do an episode probably on Sandman eventually when Matt gets around to watching it.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll probably do it after season 3 then. I'm
Yeah.
guessing.
Well, if the show's still going in 5 years, we'll probably get Matt on to do that. Get his walker out. He'll be with be an
Oh,
Xmas baby. Yeah.
and chat, let us know if we should check out that James Tynion the Fourth Sandman show, the one about the Corinthian that's out. Like I haven't checked that out yet, but
Oh, the
I've
comic
kind of heard, yeah, I've kind of heard good
Nightmare
things.
Nightmare Country. Yeah. Maria Lovett did issue 6, I think it is. She did the interiors for issue 6, so that should be pretty cool. That should be a good one.
That's another one that really, really changed the way comics were written and done in the 90s, which was cool because there was so many different artists that came through and worked on that book. So, like, it really just had all kinds of different flavors to it, which it really just opened a lot of people's minds to a lot of different things. Which, I mean, I'm not the world's biggest Neil Gaiman fan, but man, did he nail that book out of the ballpark.
Yeah, yeah. Sandman is another great example of a great 90s comic that definitely took a much different approach than the superhero stuff. And yeah, and I mean, when you think about it, look at all these great shows and movies, all based off a lot of these books and a lot of the stories that were written from the 90s, like the storylines from the 90s. And they're basing all these shows and movies on them. So, I mean, to say that there wasn't any good stuff in the 90s is kind of, I think it's just people trying to troll and get attention, maybe sometimes on social media, like they often do. So,
Well, I
yeah,
mean, like, yeah, dude, it's funny to laugh at Rob Liefeld,
yeah,
and yeah, dude, like the what was it? What was he called? The Magneto Professor X monster thing. What was that thing called? Onslaught
Onslaught,
was
yes,
terrible, but like there was so much more to the 90s that like even okay, I'll even give you Age of Apocalypse was terrible. But I mean like that's just Marvel. And I
yeah,
mean and I guess I'll also give you 90s Valiant comics because I love New Valiant and I've tried to go
mhm,
back and read original Valiant. I even my favorite character Ray, I got the trade paperback from Jim Shooter and I just can't, man. Like there's just Valiant in the 90s was terrible. But like aside
yeah.
from those, like I can't really see the whole all 90s are bad because there's just so much that came out in that time that
But even then, you got to think of what came out of the 90s. Like people can bash Liefeld, like you said, Liefeld, however you want to pronounce it, but he helped create some great characters like Deadpool, Cable. He was working on those books and helped create those characters. Like, how much of it was him and how much of it were the writers? I mean, that's up for debate, but he was still there. He contributed quite a bit to comics in the 90s. And to deny that is just, I mean, it's just wrong, right? So,
yeah, Theory, man, Rising Stars was amazing, dude. Like, yeah, probably I don't know. I like a lot of J. Michael Straczynski stuff. Even his early Marvel stuff, like Supreme Powers, was good. But yeah, right. Basically, all of Supreme Powers was is him redoing Rising Stars for Marvel, though. Like Rising Stars was so good.
hmm, uh, what else? Like Marvel, what came out? Bane, we were talking about that earlier. Bane came out in
Well,
the 90s and he plays a major role in Batman now. You had Doomsday, who eventually became a major villain for Superman and was in the movie. Uh, Azrael was another character that was came out in the 90s that now plays a prominent role in all the Batman books.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, like, there's so much Liefeld hate, but one of the funniest things is everybody loves Deadpool.
mm,
Who created Deadpool? Who created who created Cable? Like, so do you
yeah,
hate
that's
this
what I'm
guy or
saying.
not? Like,
Yeah. Like,
and
I mean,
then
sure, but I mean, is he the only guy that goes on social media and says shit and is douchey? And no, there's tons of people that go on there. But I don't know. He just puts himself out there, so he becomes a target, right? So it's easy to go at him because he won't back down and he'll confront people. So it's easy to get on that guy's case. But
and I think he's got a little bit of cred to his name to be able to do that. I mean, he was like 16 years old working for Marvel, like being able to do whatever he wanted to for Marvel. I mean, sure, it wasn't great, but I mean, he was able to do it. Like he's got that
yeah,
to his name, you know.
I mean, he wasn't all bad. I enjoyed a bunch of his stuff,
Yeah, I got
like
this Cable #1 where he drew Cable riding a horse, like in the first issue. It's
yeah.
amazing. Just a cyborg on a horse, like just simple things amaze me. But like, yeah, I love it.
But I mean, you gotta see people look back on things, but you gotta like art and writing has evolved since the 80s and 90s too. So like you're comparing comics today that are riding on the backs of the comics that came before it, right? And then you're here dissing those comics that all these creators are like riding the backs of and learn from the mistakes of those creators before them to make even better comics today. So I don't understand the people who disparage like the past and history of things. It makes no sense to me.
Right.
Mm,
Because
so
yeah, like you're saying, sure, like Mark's like some of these guys probably needed writers to come over with them. Like they shouldn't have been allowed to write their own books and draw them. But at the same time, like they created Image, which is honestly revolutionized the way comics are. Of
mm,
course, I would say like a lot of the main upswing and like what helped Image get to what they are now was when Robert
mm,
Kirkman came on and started working as chief executive officer for him and was helping them greenlight talent. But like Robert Kirkman has his roots very heavily in the 90's. You know, he was
yeah.
doing Battle Pope and like all his really offensive like Garth Ennis-esque books at that time. So
Yeah, Siri mentioned Gen 13. Was that that came out in the 90s, eh?
yeah, that was
Yeah, that was
J.
Warren.
Scott
What's his name?
Campbell.
And then Warren worked on it too. What's his name? Who does the girl book, Empowered. He worked on it a little bit too, I think.
I know Andy
Yeah,
Hartnell wrote it, and
mm, yeah. That's a people look back on Gen 13 book with a lot of love. That's a well received book, and even today,
I
people.
think a lot of '90s kids have a lot of love for the character Fairchild. Like big red-headed girl, lots of muscles,
Yeah,
nice smile.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what the boys like. They're
yeah.
looking at her smile.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
uh,
I have like almost all the Gen 13 comics, so like I was a fan of the smile. Just saying.
what else did Garth Ennis, the Pro, did that come out in the 90s or was that in the 2000s?
It would be if it was the 90's, it'd be towards the end.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it was like 98, 99, something like that.
Mm, okay. Yeah, so
Because
there's another one by
because it was
Garth
before
Ennis.
he
Yeah.
would because it was before he did Punisher for all them years, and Punisher was like right there at the beginning of the 2000s.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So there's another one that uh there's some other books too that we covered on previous episodes. Like we could talk about very briefly, like books like Black Hole, black and white book that's considered a classic by Charles Burns. Um, what else in the same style? The black and white indie stuff. You could go with. We covered some Stray Bullets as well by David Lapham. That was great. I've only read the two trades of that, but man, I got to get back on that. I really love Stray Bullets. The yeah, it's pretty brutal too. Some of the
that
stories
second
in it. Woo.
this particular issue, this is like the first one about the kid and the all the dead people was one thing,
Mhm.
but like this one is the one that really floored me, really got me
Mhm.
excited about just how something like that could just mess up a person's life forever. And then of course there is
Ghost World, yeah, by
you can't
Clays.
yeah, you can't go without talking about Daniel Clowes and like his
House, yeah. I just watched
unbelievable.
what was it this afternoon? I just watched Art Confidential. I watched that this afternoon. Actually, yeah, for the check-in, I should have said that. I watched that
Yeah,
this afternoon. And I did watch the Dead Guy documentary. Now, see, I'm sick. I got a freaking fog going on in my brain. So,
yeah,
yeah.
you got the Jovid. Joe
Yeah,
got
that's
COVID.
it. But yeah, so I watched that with and I watched Ghost World earlier in the week too. So I watched that. Yeah, I did watch some TV actually. So I don't know what I was talking about. Anyway, I'm a big fat liar. So, yeah. Yeah,
Well,
and
if you
that's
had to
cool.
go bring this damn thing up, probably one of the books that'll break your brains the hardest, man. Rick Veitch's Brat Pack, like, oh my god! If you think that the Watchmen took superheroes to like the most disturbing places ever, like just imagine like Teen Titans meets Kids, the movie Kids by Harmony Korine and Larry
Hmm.
Clark. That's basically what you get with Brat Pack. It is the most exploitative, just disturbingly wonderful superhero story you'll get taken
Hmm.
on, man. It is just messed up and about
Yeah.
as 90s as you can get because it just has that nasty nihilism that was so very prevalent in that era.
Mm, yeah, for sure. Uh, so what else do we have? Oh man, like I took this out. Got to talk about a little bit of Strangers in Paradise. Yeah, I got the big box set. Terry Moore, his
His
classic
crowning
series
achievement, yeah, what
from the '90s. Yeah, yeah,
basically made him, yeah.
yeah. And that guy's been doing his own thing forever. Like, did he even go work at the Big Two or even attempt it ever? I don't know.
I think he drew some issues of Runaways at
Okay,
one point. I think,
okay.
yeah, I think he did draw a few things here and there, but no, like most of his like that was originally Antarctic Press, and I think Dark Horse ended up putting it out too, right? Strangers in Paradise, and then
Uh,
everything else he self
came
publishes,
back.
right?
Yeah, I think there was like a 5 or 10 issue run where he went. I think I'm not sure if it was Dark Horse or an imprint from Dark Horse,
Yeah, I
and
think
then he
it was
came.
Legend, like the same.
Yeah, and then he came back with Abstract, and he started doing it all himself after that through Abstract Studios. Yeah. Mm. And that's like I've read a bunch of his stuff. What else? I read Echo. That's not '90s, but it's got his vibe. He's got that charming kind of sense. All his books have so much charm, and his characters have so much life, and you just fall in love with the characters and the way he writes them right away. Like if
Well,
you want a good fun read, like pick up a Terry Moore book. Like if you don't want to be depressed or that has some good humor, uh, like slice of life, but he mixes it in with the either horror, superhero stuff. But it's really good the way
yeah, Stranger in
he approaches
Paradise is
them.
basically what like pretty much all the buddy comedy movies from the 90s wanted to be, but they couldn't nail like because there's a certain realism to his books. There's the way his characters interact with each other, like the way they
Hmm.
talk. It's like he sat down and listened to like his girlfriend and her friend have a
Yeah,
conversation, and he put it in a book.
exactly.
Is
Yeah,
how
he nails it. Like it's it's great what he does. Like I don't think anyone can. There's second to none when it comes to that. Like you said, the interactions, the dialogue, it's so real, it's so authentic. Uh, yeah, it's great reads all around. Yeah. Hey, Manu, how's it going? Yeah, what else were we talking about? What other things did we bring up?
I would
Uh,
always want to drop this guy's name into the conversation.
Girl
Really
Scout.
changed really kind of opened my eyes to different style of stoner books. I didn't really know too many of them existed until Girl Scouts came out. It's very clever, very cute,
He
Very
started
violent
that.
too.
He started that in the 90s.
Towards the end, yeah, I was in high
Yeah.
school when
Okay.
Girl Scouts come out. I think
Nice.
98, 99. I think he originally put it out in 95, but like that was self-published. And
Like a
when
zine, kind of. Yeah.
and then when Oni
Yeah.
did put it out, it was like in 97, I think.
Cool. Cool.
And then of
Yeah.
course there's this. We can always they just heap
Oh,
love
hard
on.
boiled. Yeah. Jeff
And
Darrow with Frank Miller. Yeah.
probably his smartest written book, I would say. I like a lot of Miller's stuff, but like there are some really good zingers and twists in Hard Boiled. A little more hard hitting than the stuff you'd get from Sin City and his other books.
Well, Sin City's pretty hard hitting. I'd say maybe not all of it, but some of it is
Well, it's
pretty
hard
good.
hitting, but like the twists are you can see them coming. I don't
Yeah.
want to call it super predictable, but it's definitely tropey. Like
Yeah. Yeah, for
and
sure. For sure. Sin City, that's one of that. I was getting Hitman, Sin City was another one I was buying when I was in college. I pick up a few other ones here and there. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. Like I said, it's some Hellboy, but Sin City was definitely one. Like that. The style was amazing. Like the use of negative and positive space, the heavy blacks. That book, stylistically, it was just such an amazing black and white book. Like just the way he uses negative and positive space, it was just masterfully done. Just visually, like forget the story, just the way it was told visually with his art was just top notch, second to none in the Sin City series. Mm.
right, yeah. I wouldn't want to say that it was mostly the art that brought people to it, but it was definitely like one of the things that first got its foot in the door and kept your
Mhm.
attention for the longest.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And the adaptation for the first movie was like when I saw that, I was like, wow. Like they almost took the pages and just like
Yeah,
translated it onto the screen. It was amazing. Like that's another great example of a a comic that was adapted like masterfully onto the screen. Yeah.
yeah. Next to Sandman, it's probably one of the only ones that's like really just like a close adaptation of what was there.
Mm.
Oh yeah, dude. I love Dawn by Joe Michael Linzer. Like it's quite a bit like Sandman. It's a really neat depiction of death. Of course, this she's a very she's a redhead, but also with a very nice smile. Let's say, very easy to look at. But she's what brings you to the other side, and you get taken on these really neat journeys. My favorite one is probably the first book, Lucifer's Halo, just because when you learn about the LGBTQ relationship between God and Lucifer, I'd never seen that tackled in a comic before with that crudely, and I loved it. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Of course, my religious friends didn't like it, but screw them. I thought it was great. And Linzer's art is just so gorgeous. I mean, probably draws some of the best looking women in comics.
The best smiles in comics.
Yeah, some of the best smiles.
The best smiles in comics. We're gonna have to coin that. Make a T-shirt about it. Fucking yeah, that'd be a good T-shirt. Best smiles in
Yeah.
comics.
And
Yeah,
Theory's on a
that was
roll
good.
tonight, man. He's all into the '90s stuff. He's tapped into this episode.
Yeah, he's just a little bit younger than me, so I'd say he's close to what? He's maybe 4 years younger than me. I don't know exactly. So he'd be right about your age, Johnny, man. So that's why I'm not surprised that he's into a lot of the same stuff you're reading at the time. Yeah.
And there's Surge Goes introducing a really good topic, like characters that had just stuck around and kept prominence, even though they were kind of weird side characters just popped out in the '90s. We got Venom and Carnage, which
Yeah.
one was kind of a copy of the other, and
Mm,
like I think might in some circles might actually be liked more than Venom. So
mm.
it's really cool that you brought that up. And there's a lot like that. Me and Joe are kind of talking about weird Marvel characters that really kind of got some prominence and staying power that out of the
Gambit.
'90s. Like Gambit's another
Gambit.
one.
Yeah. Gambit. I was gonna say Jubilee, but I think she was introduced in '88 or '89, but it was close. Like Venom is in '89, I think, or the end of '88, but Carnage
Ye-
is definitely '90s. Yeah,
Venom, it might technically be 80s, but like look at the guy, he screams 90s. Like he
yeah,
is.
yeah.
You think 90s comics, you see Venom, you see teeth, you see.
Especially the Larson revamp of Venom. Like
Yeah.
when he gave him the jagged teeth with the tongue and drooling. Like I love, like McFarlane probably he gave the base for it, and then Larson, Eric Larson just took it to another level, and he created the Venom that everyone loves today with the tongue and the drooling everywhere, and just the big jagged teeth. Like he took it to the next level and really made that character visually what he is today and what everyone knows Venom to be today.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I got really weird, neat comics like this right here, The Wretch
Wretch.
by Phil Hester, which usually came out in negative burn from Caliber Comics, and it's just got these really neat little whimsical superhero stories. It's a slightly darker version of Madman, I would say, and it really kind of helped me grow to love Phil Hester. He's one of my favorite artists still working. He's probably one of the most charming and nicest artists from that era that you could meet and talk to on Twitter. He's usually pretty polite and in a good
Mhm.
mood, which you can't say for most of them. So
Yeah. Well, he's still working, so and doing like he just
yeah, he
what's one
just
of the
did Family Tree with
Family
Jeff
Tree,
Lemire.
Jeff Lemire. Yeah, that's it. That's one of the more recent ones I've seen him work on. Yeah, that's that came out what right in the middle of the pandemic, I'd say. We're right at the beginning. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
then there were books that really opened my eyes and changed my mind about some things, like this right here, Enigma by Peter Milligan and Duncan Fagredo. At
Mhm.
this time, I had read like Sandman and a couple books where like there would be characters that would pop up there and they would mention that they were homosexual, but like you didn't really get to know the characters or get involved in it. Enigma was the first book I read that was actually about like homosexual characters and their struggle and what they had to go through in that time, which was a lot more hardcore than it was now. So this was a very beautiful book, very eye-opening book. Really changed the way I perceived some things. Changed some of my vocabulary that I used at the time.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, McFarlane, but Eric Larson was my Spidey artist. He was the one for me. Yeah.
I really want to like Todd McFarlane. I do, like, but he makes it so hard. Every time I hear the man talk, like he just ruins it for himself.
He's a good like you can criticize him for a lot of things, but he's a good businessman. The guy knows how to make money. He knows how to run a company. He knows, yeah.
I forget,
So
like he was like doing this one interview and he was talking about what he would do if Spawn was real in real life, and I'm like, I know what you would do if Spawn was real in real life. You'd take him to baseball games and have him catch home run hits, man, with his chains and his cape, just Mister, yeah. But Todd,
that way, that way he wouldn't have to pay $1 million for a baseball that's probably worth nothing today.
but I got to respect the man for what he has done and what
Yeah,
his name has been a part of.
accomplished. Yeah,
Yeah,
and what he's done for comics too. Like I mean, like we mentioned before, one of the founding members of Image Comics, along with Rob Liefeld. I think Eric Larson was right there with him with Jim Lee,
Jim
uh,
Lee, Jim Valentino, Mark Silvestri,
Valentino, Silvestri. Yeah, Willis Portasio came on
Jim
after.
Lee.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a bunch of group of guys there, a bunch of artists got
Well,
together,
I
and
mean, a lot of them still running that image, but some of them
yeah,
have their own imprints. Like Valentino's got
imprint.
Shadowline, but it still
Yeah,
gets published
top
as image. Top
top
Cow
cow is
is
Silvestri.
Silvestri.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Larson never opened his own imprint. I think Savage Dragon just comes out as image proper.
Image. Yeah. Hmm. And like you said, Kirkman came in after, and he has Skybound. He does his through Skybound with Image. Uh, yeah, there's quite a few little imprints over at Image.
I thought that was dead theory, but like I just Jamie Foxx just said that he is still cast and like they're still talking about making it. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, Todd McFarlane's been talking about making a new Spawn movie since the first one came out. So
But he actually dropped some news a couple weeks ago, I think. I
yeah,
didn't catch it, but yeah.
but it's really cool that he still got Jamie Foxx attached to a star in it as Spawn because
But from the news I heard, it's going to be more focused on the two detectives.
yeah, it's gonna be about Stam and Twitch and like
Yeah.
a group of criminals that just keep going missing. Like Spawn's supposed to kind of be like a Jason Voorhees type character. He just pops out of the shadows, takes a fool here or there, and like that's how Todd's been promoting it, anyways.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like Shadowline comes out with a book here or there. Like every now and then they'll get like really popular. Like they were really busting out like around 2007 when Bomb Queen and all that stuff was coming out. But then like yeah, they kind of really slowed down. I guess whenever Valentino gets a wild hair up his butt, he'll put out some books. Otherwise, he's just chill with it.
Yeah. Another book that came out in the 90's that had a huge following.
Jeff Smith's Bone.
Bone. Yeah. I got the slipcase of that.
What was neat about that one? It was the first one that like you could get at school through book orders,
Yeah.
which
And
is
a great book. Like, if you want to introduce your kids to comics, like, it's a great book that you can read at bedtime to your kids. A great all ages book. Jeff Smith does a wonderful job. I think he studied in animation and stuff like that, like kind of more classic. He worked in animation a little bit, then he started Bone, started his own studio, and started self-publishing. So he's got a quite an interesting little story too that goes along with Bone. And he went around. He went did some through Image for a while. What, they must have released a good 20 issues maybe through Image. That book
yeah.
bounced around a little bit as well throughout its history.
Yeah, I think the image was right before it got put out through Scholastic, right? Before like they started like releasing it through book orders and like
Yeah, and
that's when
he did Razzle After too. That's another one of his books. Uh, yeah, so definitely that's when did he wrap that up? That wrapped up in the early 2000s, right? 2004 he wrapped up the Bone story.
yeah,
So
and
he started that in 93 and it ran all the way to 2004. So that's a pretty long run for a book.
hold up that compendium again, man. Look at that thing. That is
Yeah.
a toe killer, bro.
Yeah.
I forgot you got the Jovid that I don't, you got the strength to hold that sucker up. Look at that thing.
Yeah.
You could probably murder somebody with that book. Columbo
Yeah.
would be
I
coming
got
asking you.
the complete edition color. So it was good. I enjoyed it. It took like it took me a solid maybe 200 pages to really start getting into it, but it's definitely worth it. Like if you start and you're like 100 pages in, you're like, oh man, I don't know. Just keep going. It gets really good. Like the whole dynamic, like between all the bones and what's his
Oh, is it Fun
the
Bone or
uncle
the
phone
the
bone?
the
Uh,
jerk one?
yeah,
Yeah, he's my favorite.
his cousin Phony Bone. He's always scheming to make money and screwing people over, and
Yeah,
then
he's the best one.
you got the tall one with the cigar that just rolls with the punches. He just goes with the flow, right? Whatever, he's on board. It's
It's because that's a blunt, man, not a regular cigar. Is what I always thought. Because he's just
yeah.
like really just chill.
Yeah, he probably made it a cigar because they probably couldn't get away with having him smoke a blunt in a kid's book. Mm, yeah,
Yeah, Bone is like it's an all age book, but like anybody of any age could actually read it and get into it. It's not kiddie, you know what I mean? In the way
yeah,
you would think.
yeah, exactly. Like it's good. It's good for like if you want to share something with your kids at a very young age. This is definitely something that can be enjoyed, like a family book, right? You put it on the shelf, you can read it as a family. Sit there and just it's a great book. It's a great book. Mm, yeah. Another book, like I was saying earlier, that I've been reading was The Madman. That's another one I've been getting into. So that was All Red. Man, I didn't know that guy did journalism and stuff like that before he got into comics. Mm.
Yeah,
He has quite
he
an
actually
interesting.
yeah, he was a news person in Italy before he
Mhm.
got like right before he broke into comics. Like I think he did Dead Air and what was that We, which are books that
Mhm.
like you can't even buy, but like when he originally published those, like he was still living in Italy, and then he came back
Yeah.
to. I think like his first American comic he did was that Joseph Smith Mormon comic, right? The Golden Plates of Joseph Smith comic that
Oh,
he
it's
did.
possible. It's possible. But yeah, like there's a book I've read recently that I mean, I was mentioned it on maybe one of the other episodes, the Pink Lemonade, and Pink Lemonade pulls directly from Madman. So it's nice to see that Madman still has an influence on creators today, and they're borrowing from it because Pink Lemonade screams Madman. And
That is cool because Madman's so sappy and like just cute with its
yeah,
morality and the way Frank Einstein is. You know, you Welcher. You know, he doesn't like
yeah,
cuss or anything. He's
they
just
e-
like this.
they even make a joke at one point where he's like, "I really want to cuss, but I can't because it's not nice and stuff." And he's like, he has a struggle with himself about cussing, and then he says something and it's like not even close to a cuss. He's like, "Oh no, I can't, it's not." Yeah, yeah, it's good. He's so, like you said, just the innocence of him, right? That childlike innocence. Yeah, it's great. I've really been enjoying reading that. It's been fun. Mm.
And that and
And
all the
that's
weird B movie stuff that like Alred pulls out, like especially in the first couple story
robot
arcs. Yeah, with the robots and
aliens. Like, yeah, he pulls from like all his childhood, probably all the stuff he loved as a kid. He puts into this book. It's
yeah,
great.
like the one where he goes camping and he finds like the weird UFO thing and
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Then they have the yeah, that's it. The UFO thing when they go camping and it sucks him in, and he's got like that psychedelic stuff going on. Yeah.
And there's that one jerk superhero that shows up. What was his name? I forget the actual superhero
Yeah,
guy's
where
name.
they go camping, you mean? Where he
Yeah,
shows up and yeah, they got to go find the alien. Then when they find him, the alien's missing his legs and all kinds of stuff. And yeah, at the pyramids and the Mayan temples. Yeah,
yeah, it
there's
goes
some
all
good
into
stuff.
ancient alien stuff. Yeah, it goes
Mm,
goes.
mm, yeah, yeah. And he's got a great art style too. I love it. It's got like kind of a classic throwback style. Yeah, and he went on to do a lot of great stuff at Marvel. He did the Silver Surfer. He did a little X-Men run where he's one of the co-creators of what's that green fellow?
X, the dupe with yeah, X
Goop,
Force and
yeah,
Ecstatics with Peter Milligan.
Ecstatics, yeah. He did Wolverine and Goop. I think he drew that one as well. Has he done much at DC? I think he did mostly Marvel stuff, eh?
One of his biggest books was Vertigo was I Zombie. He did that with Chris Robinson.
Okay, but I mean, like mainline, like yeah, Vertigo's kind of like self-published more or less. I consider that more
I,
like
I I
okay,
think
yeah,
he
yeah,
did some covers for Doom Patrol here and there,
okay,
but like I'm not sure if
yeah,
he did actual interiors, but I know he did
yeah,
covers.
yeah. I Zombie, that's a huge one. Yeah, when did that come out? Was that in the
That
2000s?
was 2010 around there.
Okay,
2000.
yeah,
Yeah, it was around the same time like House of Secrets was coming out and Fables was like midway through. I think like they were
mhm,
just about to finish up the War for the Homelands.
mhm. Did you watch the show I Zombie?
Yeah, I actually
How
really
how
it's
is
a
it the
terrible adaptation.
adaptation?
It's a
Okay,
terrible adaptation, but it's a great
okay,
show. It's like
mm,
Lucifer. Like it was not a buddy cop show. Like iZombie the comic was more like Scooby Doo. It was
okay,
this chick zombie, her friend that's a ghost, their friend who's like a were terrier. They got her
okay.
brother who's like a teenage Frankenstein, and like it's just like these weird kind of off kilter, goofy creatures that go on these adventures together. Whereas
Mm.
the TV show was a buddy cop thing. But the one thing about that they did carry over is if she ate the brain, she would remember what the victim saw, and they did
Saw.
solve a
Okay,
few mysteries that way. But it
that
wasn't
way.
like a
Okay.
buddy cop thing.
That's cool. That's cool. Mm. Uh, I also started reading this because you recommended it. Was the Starman.
Yeah, that's
This
90's,
is
right?
this is a
Or
compendium. I've got it's a big another big boy. That's a soft cover though. I didn't. They botched they put the kibosh to the hardcover version of it, so I had to buy the soft cover. Hmm. Yeah, so I'm about halfway through the compendium about. So yeah, that one's pretty good too. I really enjoy Starman.
make
The
you wish more
design,
superhero comics were like it, right?
yeah, like the way the city is almost a character in this. The way they write the
Opal
city and
City.
everything. Opal City is becomes like almost like a not it's not just a backdrop. It becomes like a character in the story. So I really like that. It's really well done. The design of Starman is amazing. The goggles with the jacket and great stuff. Great stuff.
What's the artist in that's name again? He's more too, isn't he?
Uh, Tony Harris
Tony Harris. Yeah, that's it. And
and
yeah,
James Robinson is the writer. Yeah,
the way he draws the city, that's just beautiful Art Deco style.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
so gorgeous, man.
yeah. Oh yeah, I dig his art. It's got that it's clean, right? Clean lines, the heavy blacks with the clean lines, a little bit jaggedy, kind of like
I would say it's slightly more detailed version of Allred's art. I mean, they're kind of
yeah,
comparable. At least like they draw from the same era of comic book style that like they.
yeah, or and sometimes even has like a little feel of maybe a Joe Quesada, like with the way the edges, like how it's I don't know, it's
It's
he's
way
got
cleaner and nicer than Casada. Casada's
yeah,
stuff's
yeah.
rushed and sloppy looking.
Depending on what you get, some of his stuff that he takes more time, like but yeah, but it's definitely I've been enjoying it. Yeah.
The extremist demon is it's pretty hardcore. That's Peter Milligan and what's his name, Ted McKeever. That one's actually more about the suit, the gimp suit that the different characters wear, and basically it's four different stories, four different people who wear this like gimp suit and kind of do like these vigilante things, and it's very nihilistic, like a lot of Peter Milligan's '90s stuff is. It's not quite as heartwarming and touching as say stuff something like Minx or Enigma was. Like extremist, it lived up to its name. It really went for like that extreme. I can
Mm,
give him that.
mm, yeah. So yeah, I've been hitting some of the old stuff, 90s stuff a lot lately since the beginning of the summer. I've been reading mostly 90s stuff. I haven't been reading that many more. I still been reading recent books, but been really going, you know, dipping back into the 90s stuff and taking a taking a stroll down memory lane. It's been fun.
Yeah, one of the neat things I've rechecked out is Oink's Heaven's Butcher
Point. Okay.
by John Mueller. There is a new version that Dark Horse put out a couple years ago on trade. It has been redrawn and slightly rewritten by John Mueller. It's still good, but like I would really recommend seeking out the old kitchen sink press version of it. It's a lot more gritty. It's a lot more darker. The art's a little more rough though. The art is way more cleaner in the new version. But if you can, I'd say seek out and read both versions. But it's just really neat. It's very Garth Ennis sacrilegiousy, but it's also like a really reminds me of The Crow. It's got that same type of vigilante revenge story style to it, and it's oh man, it's a heartbreaking look at societal norms and structures and how religion plays into that. So definitely get
Point.
ready for a kick in the stomach, but it's a good one, man. Like and Mueller's art, it's very Simon Bisley esque, but a little less graffiti looking, I would say.
Okay.
But so you
Yeah.
should really like the look of it, Joe.
Yeah, I'll definitely kitchen. I'll hit up the guy that the guy in PI there that has a lot of the back issues. I'll add that onto the list and see if he can drag some stuff up for me. Yeah.
I have really odd history with early Ted McKeever, man. I remember when I was I think I was 10. It was a really special birthday. It was one of the first times I went to a real comic book store. My dad took me, and because he knew that they had this omnibus of Ninja Turtle comics. It was like the first run of the Eastman and Laird. And so but my dad didn't want me to see what he was getting me, so he told me to just kind of look around the store and see whatever you see, like look at some cool stuff. And I saw the cover of Eddie Current by Ted McKeever, which is just this really grotesque caricatures on this cover. Just it's really off-putting, especially as like a 10-year-old that's never seen anything like that. And yeah, like the story that I made up in my mind that that book was about, then when I actually read the book years later and found out what it was really about, was so much different. But that's one of the neat things that you have with stuff like that when you're a kid, especially with art that's just so different. I mean, because like Ted McKeever's work is just so unpolished, rudimentary, but at the same time, very clean, very nice. I like Ted's work, but especially the Eddie Current covers are quite grotesque. So, like, if you've ever seen those, I think you might understand what I mean. Like when I saw them.
Hmm.
But yeah, Plastic Forks is a lot of fun. I would say Motor Pool is probably like his most accessible early work. A lot of fun.
Cool. Got anything else?
Yeah.
Ah, cool. Let's see. Do you have a cover for it?
Atomic City Tales. This one, it's on the same level as something like Mad Men, but it's a little bit more of a team book, and just it's somewhere between like Daniel Clowes stuff and Mad Men, but oh, dude, it's a lot of fun. It reminds me of something you see on Adult Swim. Not quite as crass or as crude
Hmm.
as what you would think, but it's very, very. It would be something along the lines of like Space Ghost Coast to Coast or Harvey Birdman Attorney at Law type of Adult Swim.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
it's really really funny, really irreverent, goofy superhero stuff. A lot of winks and nods at the audience, a lot of fourth wall breaks, but I really highly recommend it. And you could get the trades on Amazon. There's two of them for $5 a piece. I cannot
Yeah.
recommend it highly enough. It'll say Go Power on the cover of the first one.
Okay.
Um, check it out, man. It's so good.
Okay. Who publishes that?
Oni, I believe.
Is
Oh no,
that an only book? Okay.
but at one point it was a Dark Horse thing because Kitchen
Okay.
Sink put it out, and Kitchen Sink was a Dark Horse.
Okay. Yeah. So what's the kitchen sink? I've heard that before. Uh, like how does that work? What's the history of that? Like the kitchen sink press?
I'm not sure who launched it, but it was basically a thing where they could put out more artistic.
Okay.
And I think some licensed stuff because that was where they put out like the Crow sequels. Stuff like Crow
Okay.
Dead Time and Crow Flesh and Blood all came out
Okay.
as kitchen sink books. When they relaunched Will Eisner's The Saint and had like people like Matt Wagner writing it and stuff, like that was a kitchen sink book. Stuff like Oink came out. For some reason, yeah, it's along the same lines as like the Legend brand that put out like
Okay.
like the Frank Miller books, and but
So it's an imprint they had going for a while for adjacent books to like what they were running maybe in their mainline stuff. Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Cool. Because I've heard the name before, and I was wondering if they were even. So that obviously isn't around anymore. Then.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're defunct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Dark Horse really has any of their small imprints. I think they just put everything out as Dark Horse now. Nope.
Dark Horse now, yeah.
Yeah.
No, actually, they have the Berger.
Oh yeah, but like that still has the
Yeah,
Dark Horse logo. It just says Burger
yeah,
Books too.
yeah,
Because that
yeah,
like at one time they even had like their own comic superhero line. They had
yeah,
Comics Greatest World where they put out
yeah.
stuff like X and Ghost
Yeah,
and
it's Ghost. Yeah,
Neverman.
yeah, Neverman. Yeah,
Really cool, really fun stuff. Really, really badass Frank Miller cover right there.
yeah. That's a nice cover. Yeah,
And yeah, X was it was pretty extreme for the time. I mean, uh, I would say like it was similar to Spawn. You know, he was kind of like a street guy, kind of ran around in a gimp suit, chopped people up, pretty bloody, but it was a lot of fun. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, another thing that I really love from the 2000s is weird self-published stuff. We kind of talked about it a little bit with Stray Bullets, but a guy that I really look up to who um, Paul Pope, like he did
Yeah.
some of his best work was with his Horse Press, which he released his THB, which is this really really fun sci-fi book about this girl and like this rubber ball that turns into this giant robot that protects her and like the weird shit that they get up to. Really cool, really fun sci-fi kind of surrealistic thing. Yeah, if you like, it also had a lot of throwbacks to old school German surrealism films, from the 20s type of stuff. So I'm
Okay.
really, and then he also did the One Trick Ripoff, which has been reissued by Image. This one's a really really cool uh, crime drama about like this gang who basically know this one psychic trick where they can basically make you see something or believe that something's behind you so they can rob you, and they're called the One Tricks. And like this guy Tubby, who's one of them, him and his girlfriend are going to rip his gang off and try to get away, but like
Yeah.
when another guy in the gang finds out about it and like it gets messed up. It's a heartbreaker, but it's damn good, man. It's one of the first things that really made me love Paul Pope and really
Paul
got me
Pope. Yeah.
yeah, it's not quite as good as Heavy Liquid. I think Heavy Liquid is his best. I mean,
His
out of
best work. Yeah.
but I also really like Batman Year 100, but
I
that
still
one
have to
doesn't
read
count.
that. I have that. I just haven't gotten around to reading it. Yeah. Mm.
Which is so 90s, like but in a weird way, it kind of reminds me of a better version of Frank Miller's Batman: The Dark Knight Returns,
Mhm.
which isn't a 90s book, but I think of it as the world's first 90s book. I really think that it's kind of a book that really at least kicked into superhero mainstream, what would later be perfected by people like Jim Lee and Silvestri and stuff like that. The really kind
Yeah.
of blocky superhero characters,
Mhm.
you know, big giant women with swastikas on their boobs, like that type of stuff. Like Frank was the first one to do that, and I respect Dark Knight Returns for what it is, but I wish I could love it as much as other people do. But for me,
Mhm.
like there's Paul Pope's Batman Year 100,
Yeah.
which some people could say is a ripoff, but I don't think so.
Everyone rips something off from somewhere, right? Not too many people have authentic, 100% original ideas because most people are inspired by something, and what you're inspired by is going to influence what you do. So,
Right.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. That's what else you got? You got anything else?
No, that's pretty much all I got, man. I didn't think we'd get
Pretty
through it that fast, but
pretty much something. Well, that's fine, man. I don't mind getting through it a little quick. That's not bad. I mean, I think it was a great episode. Talked about 90 comics. Uh, Freaking the chats were awesome. All you guys in the chats and gals in the chats chiming in, sharing with us. Freaking love it. It was a great time. Love it when you guys share all your stuff with us and the books you've read, and you chime in with your own stuff. So I appreciate it when you guys come out and share with us. Yeah. So Johnny, are we gonna sign off? I gotta blow my nose anyway. So
yeah, you sound like you're getting a little rough. So
yeah, I'm getting nasally big time. Yeah.
Witchblade, yeah, Witchblade's a bit up and down. Yeah, I would say the comic is definitely better than the TV show, though. Like the show could have been better. The live action show is better than the anime, though. Do not ever bother with the Witchblade anime. It is terrible.
Well, the darkness isn't that was that's a 90s book that came out in the
Darkness,
90s.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
W-
with like you said, Garth Ennis and Silvestri, and they made two video games based on that. So that's pretty cool too. Mm.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and what's his name does the voice for the two demon characters. Patton.
Mike Patton, right?
Mike
Yeah.
Patton does the voice for the demons. Yeah, Yeah, it's pretty cool that they got him to voice the two demon arms. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost fun playing it just for that, just to hear Mike Patton voice those two demons. Yeah.
There's actually pretty good new runs of Witchblade. Like Catherine Kitteridge did one. She wrote Coffin Hill, which is one of my favorite Vertigo books.
Hmm.
Her run on Witchblade was really fun. I liked that one a lot. Kind of a little bit more noiry than it normally was. Kind of played with the cop angle of it a little bit more. Really good run. So I highly recommend checking that out if you're interested in looking at some newer Witchblade theory. But until next time, this has been Pink Buzz. We really appreciate you guys joining us for this ride, and take it easy. Have a nice weekend.